patience and understanding as we want to give all of our media an opportunity to ask questions. I will now turn it over to Dr. Jane Belmar.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you to all of our board members who continue to provide such great support for us. And as always, thank you to our partners in the media who are here today. We continue to rely on you to provide our families and our community with very important information. As Chris touched on, we're celebrating Teachers this week. And for our teachers, there is much to celebrate and to lift up, as they truly are what holds us as a school district together. And if any of our teachers are viewing this, I want you to know how much I especially appreciate everything that you've been doing in the last few months. I appreciate seeing the incredible commitment and love you have for your students and the innovative and creative ways you have reimagined learning throughout all of this. I'm so very proud to be your superintendent. In a crisis like this, we will see heroes emerge, those who either through their professional or personal values unselfishly step up and help, give support, and provide what is essential for our community to respond, recover, and push on. And during COVID-19, our teachers are certainly among those heroes. Teachers, your work has played a big role in keeping our community together, connected, and in support of each other. We recognize that COVID-19 has had an impact on teachers, and as a former longtime elementary middle school teacher, I fully recognize and appreciate how much our teachers are missing their students and that in-person engagement that is so important to education. I'm proud of the way you've adapted, innovated, and reinvented new ways to provide learning and to continue to engage your students in the way that you have. And it serves as a great example to them and to all of us of how life, no matter the circumstances, will always go on, and how as a community we can and will overcome. I also want to point out, as someone who has retired from education at least a couple of times, I do understand how hard it is to have an abrupt ending to the physical school year. And this has been hard for all of our teachers, but it has an especial impact for our teachers who are retiring at the end of this school year. They will not have the opportunities to wind down not only the school year, but their very careers as educators by saying goodbye to students and colleagues in person. So we're really aware of that, and we are looking at some new ways to honor our retirees this year under these challenging circumstances. More to come on that later. So it is with a sense of our Madison community that we had this primarily in mind as we planned our graduation for the class of 2020 this year, also under very unusual circumstances. We are pleased to tell our senior class how the greater Madison community is going to honor, appreciate, and celebrate them. Let me begin with our virtual graduation. MMSD has partnered with WISC TV3, our local CBS TV station, to professionally produce a high-end broadcast of our virtual graduation in two 2-hour blocks, one on the evening of June 12th and 2 separate 2-hour blocks on the evening of June 13th. WISC has obtained special permission from the CBS network to preempt primetime network programming for our graduates so that our community could participate in these celebrations when local viewership is at its highest. This broadcast will also be live streamed on Channel 3000, their very popular news website. And just prior to the broadcast of our virtual graduation ceremonies, there will be a special graduation edition of News 3, where many uplifting stories will be shared to celebrate all of our youth who are moving on to the next phase of their lives during one of the most challenging periods of our time. In addition to the television broadcast, there will be a special MMSD graduation edition of Madison Magazine that will celebrate and recognize all of our students and will provide one more way for our seniors to remember this great moment in their lives. There will also be several digital billboards spread around the city that will showcase each 2020 senior student to say congratulations and honor them for their accomplishments. As part of our plan, we also recognize the importance of the class of 2020 being able to come back together again as a school community in a more personal way, not only for the purpose of congratulations for their achievements, but to personally say goodbye to the classmates and educators that they have grown with. For this reason, we are also planning an in-person class of 2020 celebration event, not a graduation ceremony, but a venue that will give our students, staff, and families an opportunity to come together in person to honor and celebrate our students and give them a proper send-off. The date of this later celebration event has not yet been determined. However, it will be held when the risk of COVID-19 has declined to a level where it will be safe for large gatherings. Our communications team will be reaching out to other news organizations and community members to plan other celebrations as we mark this passage for our 2020 seniors. I want to thank you for your grace and patience as we've been working very hard to make this something that really honors our senior class of 2020 in a special and an appropriate way. To share some important insights on our graduation plans, we have a very special guest who has two perspectives. One as an MMSD Board of Education member and also as a parent of a graduating senior, and that is Chris Carusi. Chris, I'm going to turn it back to you. Chris, you need to unmute.
Thank you. Thanks, Jane. I appreciate it. Yeah, I want to start out my remarks by saying that I know personally the devastating loss that our seniors and families are experiencing right now. As Jane pointed out, I'm wearing two hats as I speak today. I'm both a Madison School Board member and I'm the parent of a graduating senior. As a school board member, I have the responsibility to keep our students and families safe. I'm paying close attention to public health guidance, statistics, and the trajectory of COVID-19 in our city, county, and state. However, as a mom, I'm absolutely heartbroken that I won't get to see my daughter graduate with her classmates at the Cole Center. The students in the class of 2020 and the people who love them are missing out on deeply meaningful experiences and memories like prom and graduation. I'm grateful that MMSD is working closely with the community to ensure that we are upholding and honoring the achievements of every one of these students in the safest possible way. However, I think it's also important to acknowledge that recognition is not the only purpose of the ceremonies and traditions that mark the end of high school. While missing out on graduation and prom is devastating, the smaller things, like not getting to see your classmates again or sign yearbooks, are in some ways even more painful for our seniors. Members of the class of 2020 are missing out on countless moments they would have had to say goodbye to their community of friends, peers, and adult mentors. For many of these kids, this community has been in the making since they entered kindergarten in 2007, and it has been torn apart by this pandemic. I also know this is incredibly hard on our teachers and our staff, who wish they could bid farewell to the class of 2020 in person and wish them well on the next steps of their journey. MMSD educators do much more than provide learning opportunities for our students. They have been there to share their successes and help them navigate the turbulence of adolescence. When our students and staff left our buildings on March 13th, they had no idea it was the last time they would see each other, and they didn't get to say goodbye. I know that graduates and their families are grieving right now. I'm living it. However, as a mom, I also know that it's a bad idea to make promises and commitments to your kids that you can't keep. I wish with all my heart that we could commit to an in-person graduation ceremony this summer. But the COVID-19 virus currently shows no signs of abating, and it would be disingenuous of MMSD to make that commitment. That said, MMSD has made a commitment that the class of 2020 will meet again to celebrate in person when it is safe to do so. As a board member, I will make sure we uphold that commitment. As a mom, I can't wait to see everybody in person and celebrate our kids. The class of 2020 was born in the shadow of 9/11, and the US has been engaged in armed conflicts for their entire lives. Many of them participated in the Act 10 protests in 3rd grade and have walked from East High School to the Capitol more than once to demand an end to gun violence and climate change. And now they are living through a pandemic. These young people are smart. They know how to organize. There is no doubt in my mind that they will come out of this pandemic even stronger than they already are, and that their generation will go on to change the course of history for the better. I want to personally thank all of the families of our graduates for being there for your kids and supporting them right now. Most of all, though, I want to thank the class of 2020 for the sacrifices they are making to keep our community safe and healthy. I speak on behalf of the entire school board when I say that we are truly proud of you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for sharing that. And it is so important that our seniors hear how much we understand what their sacrifice is all about. And I appreciate your words. We want to provide a few more details on the production and the overall program that we have for graduation. And in order to do that, we have some special guests with us. I'd like to introduce Chief of High Schools, Mike Hernandez, and from WISC TV, General Manager, Tom Keeler, and News Director, Sarah Gray, and from Madison Magazine, Andy Belling. And we'll have a few words from them. And then after that, Tim will open it up for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Belmore. For the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've talked about graduation. And last week I spoke about just how important it's been to have our community partners to support us during this trying times. I invited Tom, Sarah, and Andy to come here to talk a little bit about what we've been working on for the last 2 weeks. And it's been quite a project, hand in hand with the 6 high schools in Madison. I'm proud of the work that we're doing, and I know that this will not replace in-person graduation, but I think that this is going to be a very special event that that we're going to be putting on hand in hand with these partners. So, Tom, do you mind talking a little bit about the program?
I'd be happy to. Thanks so much, Mike, and Interim Superintendent Belmore. Thank you so much, and for that heartfelt message, Chris. If there was ever a keynote speech, I think that hits on all cylinders there. So, thank you for that. On behalf of Morgan Murphy Media, which consists of WIC TV, News 3 Now, Channel 3000. And Madison Magazine, we too want to thank the teachers who have worked so hard over the years educating our children. It has been a commitment of Morgan Murphy Media for decades. As a family-owned business in the state of Wisconsin since 1892, we celebrate teachers, and we do so daily with editorials of Neil Heinen and our top-notch teacher program. That is a benchmark of what we do. When Neil Heinen, and thanks to the relationships that exist, particularly with Neil Heinen, who's been a voice, I call him the conscience of our community. And he's been a voice for teachers and students and for causes that resonate with the entire community. And fortunately, he's got wonderful relationships that are built on trust and respect. And he was approached, he spoke to Mike Hernandez, and this as just an idea, that we're thinking about doing something. And when Neil brought it to us, I assembled my team, which consists of News 3 Now and Madison Magazine and Channel 3000, to come up, to scratch our heads and come up with a way that we could really pull off and accomplish something that the class of 2020 and you all, the administration at MMSD, can be proud of. We certainly recognize these times and what has been taken away from the students. And it affects us all. And so we put together a team, a program, and we're going to devote every resource we have to put together a television program and a special edition of Madison Magazine that is award-winning. We've assigned Emmy Award-winning producer Steve Kane, who's been producing local television for 42 years here at WIC TV, and he is the senior television producer on this project and is very well known in this community. So by combining our resources, we're going to put together a show and make sure every kid in every school feels as if they have accomplished, through their primary and secondary education as a culmination, that they're proud to look back on a career, an education career that they can take and then become young men and women in our community. So thank you for the opportunity. Sarah, our news director, can speak a little bit to the television, and Andy on the Madison Magazine, but we're gonna give everything we have, both resources, time, talent, design, creative, editing, layout, to make this something that's never been done before. So thank you for the opportunity. We're delighted to participate.
Thank you, Tom. Sarah, did you want to?
I just wanted to kind of echo what Tom said, but also I think we haven't ever done something like this before. So this is really a unique opportunity to try something new. Clearly, we're all in uncharted waters, but we're doing our best to really make sure that every student does get their recognition that I think parents, families are all really craving right now. So we intend to show every student's picture, to read all their names. You can expect it to look as much like a graduation as we can. We're hoping to hear from students, principals, keynote speakers, looking at ways of incorporating different choir performances and band performances. And so we're just really excited to do the best virtual graduation that we can. And I think we're really excited I think our newsroom and our communities are really looking for a good reason to celebrate right now. And this feels like a great reason to come together around these students. So we're really excited to see what we can pull off.
Yeah, and from our perspective from Madison Magazine, we were super excited to know that we could be a part of this and try to provide a unique experience for these students that aren't going to have the traditional graduation. So we're going to put together a program that is a tangible memento from this history making year, where they, we're going to do graduation differently, but hopefully, this virtual graduation will capture the memory, the moment, and then the magazine product will capture the memory and have, they'll have something to remember it by. So we're excited to get to work on that. And we've got a incredibly talented creative director in our team that is excited to give the Madison Magazine touch to a reinvented program.
So that being said, again, we're working hand in hand with our 6 high schools, and I know the high schools have been reaching out to students to talk about ideas of how to do this, and this is just a very exciting adventure. So we're looking forward to seeing how it plays out. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, and thanks to everyone, with that, we'll turn it over to questions and answers with our reporters. The first up is Logan with the Wisconsin State Journal.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for doing this. It's really helpful. Just a quick question on graduation. It's a little silly too, but will you be able to play Green Day's quintessential graduation song, Good Riddance, on the program, or would it need to be specially licensed for that?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. It cut out a little bit.
Yeah, the quintessential graduation song, Good Riddance, Time of Your Life by Green Day. They played at a lot of graduation ceremonies. I'm not sure if it's being broadcast on TV, if you need a special license to play that.
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll have to take that question and get back to you, Logan.
I wasn't
Okay.
expecting that question, Logan. I'm sorry.
I wasn't expecting to ask it, but it just popped in my head. But on the topic of summer school, is there an update on what that plan can look like at this point? And if it doesn't happen, what sort of financial impact could that have on equalization aid?
Okay, good question. Thank you, Logan. We're still working on plans for summer school. I know that Lisa and Kelly are both here. They can add into this, but we have not quite landed on that. And there's still some things up in the air. about the financial piece and enrollment and how we can count that. So there's some legal and DPI guidance that we're waiting to hear, and we hopefully will hear yet in the next couple of days so that we can move forward with that. Lisa or Kelly, do you want to add to that?
Sure. Thank you, Jane. And that's a really good question. We are anxious to get the summer school decisions made quickly. We are only about 5 weeks out from when summer school would begin. I can say that what we are thinking about at the secondary level is primarily credit recovery and credit replacement. And anything at the elementary level would be focused on literacy and math. So more to come as we receive more information. Kelly, you want to talk a little bit about the financial piece?
Yeah, I think the only update I want to make is to understand that we always put the needs of students first, and the needs for this particular summer school are weighing heavily on our minds as far as how we best serve students with the highest quality program, considering our circumstances. And what we hope is that we'll hear from the state that they understand that these are unusual times and that we'll be given the flexibility that we need in order to implement that program. But if we don't get the financial flexibility that we need from the state, we'll have to use the resources that we have available to us. And that would be without potential funding from the state or via the Revenue Authority to make sure that we support students and what they need, and we'll put those needs first. And we'll have to balance the budget based on hopefully what the state gives us or on the resources we have available in order to do that.
Thank you, Kelly.
And then my next question, it's probably for Chad, but is there an update on when the 1,800 hotspots that were ordered can be delivered?
Chad or TJ? Chad?
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, we are still tracking towards middle of next week. And as soon as we get them, we're going to turn them around and likely ship them to households as quickly as possible. So the date that Kajit's been using has been the 11th of May, obviously subject to all kinds of logistical things that could make that happen sooner or a little bit later, but we're still shooting for middle of next week.
Thank you, Chad.
Yep.
And my last question, I know it's difficult to project potential future budgetary hits due to the pandemic, but at this point, is there a financial estimate on the COVID-19 related costs, such as for the additional hotspots, for extra cleaning?
Yeah, we've been keeping track of that. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet, but we are keeping track of it. And Kelly, I don't know if you want to update on that at all.
Sure. Yep. Just like Jane said, we are keeping track. We've only had really 1 month end since this started, so we won't know the final impact until the end of the year when we do all the reconciliation. But this might be a good time to make sure everyone realizes that, you know, us too are taking the necessary financial positions in order to make sure that we can end this year in the best case possible. So we are currently scrubbing all department budgets to make sure we know what funds are available and repurposing them as necessary. Logan, you mentioned the Wi-Fi costs, which of course are very high and unbudgeted in the kind of $600,000 range of costs. So in order to fund items like that, we've been pulling from available budgets within the budget. We've been lucky in getting some fundraising support for some of our costs, and you heard a good list of that at the beginning in Chris's opening remarks. But we've also done things like as of April 30th, we put in a purchasing services deadline so that any of the expenses that are coming through the system, April 30th was that deadline, which will help us reduce costs through the end of the year. I personally am reviewing all contracting expenses above $2,000. That's part of my standard processes and putting additional looks and controls on all funding that we spend going forward through the end of the year, along with working with HR and getting ready for next year's budget. So yes, we are aware of the expenses. We have a number of unknowns about next year, that we'll be looking at putting plans in place for. But for now, we are putting the necessary controls in place to ensure that we end this year as strong as we possibly can, considering the environment we're in.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Logan.
Thank you, Logan. Next up is Scott with Cap Times.
Thank you all very much for taking the time to answer our questions today. I was wondering if someone could speak in a little more detail to the grant from the Wisconsin Partnership Program with the School of Medicine and Public Health and working with families, just kind of how that is going to look this summer and what specific goals the district has for that work.
Yeah, that's very exciting, and I think very, very important work that we'll be doing this summer. And Jay, I think you have the most details about that.
Yeah, Scott, thanks for bringing this up. We're certainly excited about this possibility and additional resources from Wisconsin Partnership Program. We're just in the very early stages of planning out logistically what this is actually going to look like, but just recognizing that we have a number of students that are at higher risk, and especially in times of the COVID-19, that risk is even more significant. And during this school year, our nurses and our social workers are obviously in close communication with these students and their families. But given that most nurses and social workers are not in that same communication with students and their families over the summer, this grant will provide funding for them to maintain those supports throughout the summer, especially for students with asthma, diabetes, and other conditions that pose a much more significant and higher risk. Details to be worked out and shared at a later date once we have all those details finalized.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Another question, and this relates to summer school a bit, and I know there's a lot of uncertainties there, but I was wondering how amid those uncertainties you're going about planning for staffing for summer school, what that process is going to look like given that it is approaching quickly.
Lisa, maybe Cindy, I think secondary we've kind of gotten a better handle on than elementary at this point.
Yeah, I would say we are working with human resources, and we have continued to have staff members apply to teach summer school. How many staff members and administrators we will actually need moving forward will depend on the model that we choose. We are currently actually thinking about sending a survey out to staff who maybe prefer to work in the virtual environment this summer. We will certainly need content certified teachers at the secondary level to ensure students can earn the necessary credit that they need. Cindy?
No, Lisa, you hit it. The only thing I was going to reiterate is part of it will be dependent on what students need, because we have to match the student need to the teacher and the teacher licensure.
And we have many more variations at the elementary level. I think right now too, we're trying to confirm the students who have been registering for summer school and really kind of trying to land on a number that we know we'll need to work with. I hope that helps, Scott.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much. My last question is about professional development for teachers. I know there's a PD day coming up for them, and I was hoping someone could talk a bit more about what the focus of that day will be. And then in addition, I was wondering if there's plans to do PD this summer, specifically focused on virtual learning, given the uncertainty about next school year.
Yeah, we've definitely had that on our minds, especially the virtual learning piece and what we're learning about virtual learning and what our teachers are learning from our students. And so we're going to be looking at that May 11th day as our first kind of foray into that and trying to understand better what the feedback is that we've gotten and how that relates to what we need to provide for teachers. So I don't know, Jorge, if you have any more specific plans to add to that. I know you're here somewhere. Here he is.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, thanks, Jane. Yeah, and so, and the other important part about the Professional Learning Day is that it is a collaboration between school leaders and teachers. in terms of needs that are arising, and also reflecting and adjusting based on what we have learned over the last couple of weeks. And into the summer, that's something that we're gathering feedback on right now, and working alongside different teams, our curriculum instruction team, teaching and learning teams. And so more to come on that, but for at least the 13th, that really that's what we're planning on doing.
Oh, did I say May 11th?
Yeah, it's the 13th.
I'm
Yep,
sorry, it is.
all good.
I had to change that day. May the 13th is our professional day.
I had May 13th, so I'm glad to have that confirmed. Thank you. That's all my questions, so thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Next is Morgan Wolf, NBC 15.
Hello? Can you guys
Hello,
hear me
Morgan.
okay?
Yes, we can.
Hi. First, shout out to Logan. I like that Green Day song, on a light note. But then my other question is, are students still going to be sent caps and gowns at all for the graduation?
I'm going to let Mike take that. I know we're in the process of planning. There's more to that they'll need to collect. So
Yeah, actually after this press conference, the schools are going to be sending out notices to their families and students about this press release, about active consent for the use of their likenesses, as well as to begin picking up cap and gowns, cap and tassels. Some students are going to want to take their pictures with that as well. So we'll be working on that on a school by school basis, but we'll start doing that here soon.
Okay, I think that's it for me. Thanks for doing this, guys.
Thank you. Savannah with Spectrum One.
Hey guys, question for you. Can you tell me a little bit more about the digital billboards and what those could look like, where they could be, if they'll feature every student?
Yeah, we're working with Adams Outdoor Advertising. We have multiple billboards, both on the east side and the west side, in which we'll be able to feature schools on the east side and the west side. And the billboards will actually be ran for 2 consecutive weeks. It will have their name, the school that they're graduated from, and a congratulatory message. Again, that's part of what we are going to be working on and getting the active consent from families to ensure that it's okay to use their pictures. And so that's another example of the partnerships that we have right now, but we're working with Adams Outdoor Advertising to do that.
And then just something that popped into my head the other day, is there any sort of status with the yearbook this year? Since usually it's students that put it together, and something I'm sure they would want to take away from their time in high school.
Yeah, so actually I was just meeting with the principals earlier today about this. Yearbooks, we were able to, there's a class and a teacher that's putting those together. I know if you follow through social media, you'll see that some of the teachers and students have been requesting additional photos to do kind of close out some of the spring activities. Unfortunately, we won't have some spring sports activities and spring the musical and any of those type of events, but they've all been put in, and the yearbooks will be arriving the 3rd week of May to the end of May, beginning of June. And we'll be setting up an opportunity to pick up yearbooks, as well as to drop off Chromebooks, as well as to pick up items from their lockers.
That's all for me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Next is Jade with WORT.
Hi. I had another question about graduation. Specifically, I know a big part about graduation is celebrating with your friends and family. What is the district's responsibility to make sure that students are being safe when they're not at school?
Well, we encourage our students to follow safe practices when they're not at school. And I mean, this year we will not have any school-sponsored venues for students and families to come together. So hopefully they will be with their families. and that will be a safe place for them to be. But that is not something that we would necessarily arrange for. We would, surely provide them guidance and best practices, but that would be up to the families. Mike?
Yeah, if I might also add, through this, we have some staff that are not teachers, student services, as well as some additional staff that work with students, but maybe not necessarily in the classroom. Our schools have been utilizing this time to reach out, continue the relationships with all our students, just touching base with them, and then also actively encouraging them to follow the safer at home regulations. You'll see some videos that on social media that our student groups are putting out, just reminding students of being safe and making smart choices. And again, as I said last week, it's the partnership that we would have with our families just to ensure that if they're hearing it, if we're united on this, we'll work through this.
Cool. And then one last question is just why did you decide to go with the Morgan Murphy media for the graduation, virtual graduation?
I've had a relationship with Neil for 12 years. I reached out as a thought partner to think about how we might be able to do this. And it just fell into place. And it was an opportunity with Tom being an East Sider. It was just something that we could be able to do together to celebrate our students.
Great, thank you.
Is that all your questions, Jade?
Yeah, I have an unstable connection, so it's also making it a little hard.
Okay, all right, thank you. So we'll go now to Amy Reed with News 3.
Hi there, thanks so much for doing this. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I was wondering, we got a memo from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau today that showed a multi-million-dollar loss in tax revenue in April. Sorry, Jane, can you not hear me?
Now we can.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
you may want to start over. We missed the first part of your question.
Thank you. No problem. So we got a memo today from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau showing a multi-million-dollar drop in tax revenue. And we're anticipating at the state level having potentially a $2 billion drop in tax revenue. If those cuts to state budgets have to be made in aid to local schools, which people worry that might happen, what preparations is Madison School District doing to compensate for any potential loss in state funding?
I'm going to let Kelly take that. I know one of the things is planning a number of different scenarios. So Kelly, do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jane. And you are right. We are closely tracking the information out of the state regarding the state's projected revenue shortfalls. And there's a couple actions we're taking today for this year, but largely we suspect that those impacts will affect our 2021 budget. The board will vote on that budget in June. So we're still in planning and budgetary scenario planning for the 2021 budget as we move closer to June. So I mentioned earlier in this press conference some of the things that we're doing right now, which include just kind of cost monitoring and cost reduction strategies in order to protect this year's budget and land this year's budget as close to kind of even as we can, and hoping that we don't have to dip into any fund balance. Those particular controls include monitoring all expenses and contracts that are going out the door right now. Anything over $2,000 goes through my office and my review, just to make sure that they're expenses that must be made this year. We are still educating kids. We are still serving our students and families in line with our mission, granted in new ways. So we need to make sure that we're spending the money that we need to in order to adequately serve our students and our community right now. But we do need to make sure that we're taking extra precautions in order to help ensure that this budget lands as evenly as possible. Most of our work is being done in preparation for the 2021 year. We suspect that coming out of the information we received from the state today, the next moves will be to put in place a state budget repair bill. We suspect those conversations will start up in May yet, and we'll be watching them closely. We'll be looking for any potential budget cuts that come our way. You mentioned a reduction in the state equalization aid. We too agree that that's probably going to be the first place that we'll see school reductions. In our April budget, though, we have already been planning for a $5.5 million budget loss in state equalization aid. That's part of our planning efforts for April already. In addition to that, though, what we might be looking for is a revenue limit, any revenue limit reductions, or any other changes to any increases that we had suspected would come through. If any of those are no longer funded, that will be additional budget reductions on top of the $8 million budget reduction this board has already taken and the hard decisions they've already made. So we'll be putting scenarios in front of the board in the upcoming months, starting the conversation in the May operation work group, digging much deeper into the conversation in the June operation work group, hoping by then we know more from the state before we vote on the June budget.
Can you just shed some light on how you can come up with scenarios and how you can handle putting together a budget when you aren't sure what's going to happen on the state level, on the federal level, and within the school district?
Well, you just named it right. It's been a lot of sleepless nights, I'm not going to lie. This is not an easy task that's being asked of any public school system right now, and nonetheless, the Madison Metropolitan School District. So we're putting scenarios in place for what it looks like for anywhere between a $0 and $3 million budget reduction. We're looking at plans of what it might look like if we get into a $3 to $6 million budget impact. And then we're putting worst case scenarios together of what it might look like if we get as far as a $9 million budget decrease coming at us. And we sure hope that's not the situation the state is putting public schools in, to be in those worst case scenarios. But we know that that the right thing to do is to start planning so that we can put equity first. In order to put equity first, we need to do planning. We need to take pauses. We need to question the decisions that we're making and putting students first. We always aim to protect the classroom, and that will be our first hope in our scenarios, that we can protect the classroom first, looking at reductions, what reductions we can make at central office first, and then move from there.
Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Amy. Amy, we'll go to Talil with News 3. Talil? How about Matthew Clark with News 3? All right, next up will be Layla with the Simpson Street Free Press.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to go off Morgan's question about caps and gowns. Since it was mentioned that the in-person event to celebrate the class of 2020 won't be a graduation ceremony per se, will it still be an opportunity for students to wear their caps and gowns, since it is a considerable financial investment for a lot of students and also an important tradition for the students as well?
I'm going to let Mike go into the details, but traditionally every Madison high school has kind of planned their own graduation ceremony, and with some things that happen across the district to make sure that there's equity there. And I think they're having conversations, well, they will be having conversations about that. I think the plan is that each school will have a conversation about that. Mike, do you have more details on that?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand the question. Are you asking if they would be able to wear them during the virtual graduation?
No, during later, the celebration that comes later after it's safe to come into crowds.
Well, we don't necessarily enforce a dress code, so anybody could wear anything that they would like during that day. It's just not going to be a graduation ceremony. I'm imagining if it's in July or August, it'll be warm. But unfortunately, it's not going to be a ceremony to wear the cap and gowns during that time.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Channel 27 is going to pass. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to ask additional questions? All right, it sounds like that will wrap it up. Jane?
Yes, I do want to thank our community partners, Tom, Sarah, and Andy. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you all for working with Mike to plan an alternative graduation ceremony that we hope will be important for our kids and families. Chris, did you have any other remarks?
No, thank you so much to everybody for all of your comments.
And thank you for your comments, Chris. They were very meaningful. I know they meant a lot to families and students, so we appreciate that. So that is it. Thank you all for coming. We will hopefully see you again at our next press conference.
Thank you.
Mhm.